bring an amazing guest, and today that's Dawn Phoenix from Ohio. She is an intuitive interspecies communicator, and I cannot wait to get into our conversation today. We have really natural conversations and really get real with the spiritual. There's no jargon here. We are just choosing a topic that Monica just pulls out of her hat and we go with that. And we just have a lot of fun and seeing what comes up for us. Sometimes it's a spiritual practice we're already into. Sometimes it's one we're having a challenge with. Sometimes it's like, ooh, I'd like to try that. So let's get into it.
Okay, so today's conversation is all about submission.
Submission.
Yeah, uh,
Submission.
have no idea where we're going to go with that, but let's dive in, shall we? So we always start with the same question, and the first question, and we'll go. Don will ask you: Is submission something that's a part of your spiritual practice?
Every day. It has to be. And so, yeah, the way, do you want me to elaborate on
Yeah,
how?
absolutely.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if we were like skimming the surface with everybody first. So, to me, submission means submitting to your higher power and letting go of the human ego. So, sometimes I think I know better. Oh, or that voice creeps in, that judgment voice. Don't do this, don't do that. And so to me, part of submission is submitting to my intuition, to that higher power that knows better, and to just let it take over. But it's still me, but it's the part of me that knows better. So during my day, when I'm working, or if I'm in a session, I submit to my higher power so that can flow through me. And that means opening up the channel for that to come through.
Very cool. Very cool. What about you, Jennifer? Is submission a
Hmm.
part of your spiritual practice?
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't think I'd call any of my practices submission, but similar to what Don's been sharing, it is that kind of surrender, the being led by soul, and just freeing my spirit to direct the life that I'm meant to live. That's been my motto like forever. And I'm also thinking about, like, when we submit a form, we fill it out with all the information about us and what we're wanting to do and what we're wanting to put out there, and then we send it off. And so that reminds me of just like sending out an intention, a kind of vision for what we want, and then just rolling it over, just letting it go and not attaching to any kind of outcome, but just sending it out, sending it off, sending it out into the universe. And so, yeah, I can kind of relate to it a little bit that way. What about you, Monica?
Yeah, when I first saw submission, I was like, those church days back over, right? Wives, submit to your husbands. Children, submit to your parents. Men, submit to God, right? Like there's this whole kind of like, eh, right, that could come around that concept. But in my more mature spirituality, right, in kind of not being about the religion of it all, but the actual like communion and connection to a higher power. The submission is absolutely a part of my power, about a part of my like spiritual practice, but it is um, kind of like the how do I put it? It is the gift of my spiritual practice, right? So like for me, people will ask me stuff all the time, and I go, "Oh, that's none of my business." Right? They'll be like, "Well, how are you going to do that?" "Oh, that's none of my business. That's not that's not my part. My part is this is what I'm trying to achieve, showing up in my due diligence and following the plan that was laid out, listening, like Don was saying, listening to my intuition, and coming from a place of contribution and service to everyone who's in front of me. The how, not my business. The like when, not my business. Has nothing to do with me. That is not my part. And so it's really just submitting to the larger plan that's at work. And some of the words that I guess are confirmation or affirmational for me in this space are words like everything in divine timing, right? And that universe is conspiring for my good. And so when I'm saying those things to myself, it's reminding me to submit to the the process, right? Submit to the organic kind of unfolding of what is happening in front of me, as opposed to trying to kind of like take the wheel, right? And so yes, it's a huge part of my spiritual process, and I often refer to it as extreme faith, right? Like extreme faith. Like there's people who have, oh yeah, I have faith, but I do need to have these things in place in order for me to feel comfortable. And I have gotten to the point where I'm like, no, 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 we live in extreme faith. I will step, the floor will land, will be under my foot when it's supposed to be there. I will, fly and wings will appear to guide me, right? Like I will just do the things because they intuitively feel like that's the next step, the next phase, the next movement, unaware and untethered to an outcome, like you were saying, Jennifer. But in the end, it has never failed me. Where it has failed me is when I felt that intuition, I felt that tug to do something, and I didn't. That's the only time I noticed that I was like, oh, I didn't submit. I tried to and it's something as simple as like, I should grab an umbrella. No, I don't need that umbrella. It's sunny outside. It's fine. Right? Something as simple as that. I don't want to carry it around all day anyway. And what if I carry it around and it's too, I'm just carrying it for no reason and it's raining, it's not raining, it's just hot all day. Then like I will have carried it all day for no reason. Every single time I went against that intuition, it I was like, I should have listened to my first mind. I should have listened to what I was saying earlier. Had I just followed that thought, I would have been fine. I would have had what I needed in this moment. So, yeah, so it is definitely, it's like a strong part of my spiritual practice, I would say, as opposed to a lightweight version of my spiritual practice. It might just be what my spiritual practice is called, I think, maybe.
Very cool. And it sounds like there's like a commitment to the path, like a devotion, a dedication, that this is just what you're going to do and you're going to follow that, trusting that, fully having faith in that knowing that it's going to support you.
Yeah, which I think is the hard part for most people, right? Like, what do you mean you want me to do something? How do I know it's going to work? Right? I think the most often question. I'm pretty sure all of us, because we do somewhat spiritual unfolding and enlightening and supporting of people, they're always like, how do I know it's going to work? Right? Big question. Do you get that, Dawn?
I do. I get people, asking, how do I know it's going to work? Can you prove it to me? And it's like, no. I can tell you what other people have had experiences with, but really your experience is the only thing that you need.
Yeah. So true.
How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, totally. What comes to mind is like you said, Monica, that it seems sunny, so it doesn't really make sense to grab an umbrella. And yet you're hearing this. Maybe it's, you should take one. And I have one of my affirmations is I follow my intuition even before it makes sense. Right? To remind myself to submit to that. I follow my intuition even before it makes sense, where, we don't have the logic in there, or it's a nice integration of logic and intuition that we can practice discernment in. But yeah, I like that. Following my intuition before it even makes sense. That's what I was reminded of.
Yeah. Like, have you guys had any of those experiences where you're like, I should do this weird thing that makes no sense at all, and then like didn't follow it and it like totally backfired?
Oh yeah,
all the time.
Share, Dawn. Share your experience.
I mean, it's just like every day, like, okay, I shouldn't take the highway today. I should go take the side street. Why? I take it all the time, but I didn't check Google Maps before I left the house or anything. So I get there and literally the highway is backed up so much that people are turning around and coming up the exit I'm going down. And then I went, oh, and I turned around and I went up the exit I went down, and everybody is coming up. So there was that. Had I listened, I wouldn't have had to try to
Yeah.
get to the side streets after that. So that was the most recent example. Yep.
Yeah. What about you, Jennifer? Is there a time you can recall?
Yeah, there are, but there's also times where, well, I'm thinking about when I travel actually, that I usually know my starting place. I kind of know sort of where I want to be, like Southeast Asia, but I won't have like a full on plan where everything's structured and planned out. I'm more of an explorer. I'm really called and drawn to the land and where I end up. And so I go out in the day and I never know where I'm going to go. Like I just start walking and then I end up in having incredible experiences, meeting people that I would never have expected to meet, or having new discoveries, and just being totally open and aware, but submitting to where I'm being drawn to, where I'm being called to, where spirit's taking me, just going, just
Yeah.
ending up somewhere with no actual plan whatsoever and just showing up there. So there's that kind of positive side too. Yeah.
Yeah. The, when you were saying that, this very interesting story came in my head about submitting to my feelings.
Mm.
Um, so I went on so it was supposed to be a girls' trip to the Bahamas with my friends. But no one followed the girls' trip code, and a few of them brought spouses and boyfriends and such, right? So already a little annoyed. But so in order to do the Bahamas, I'm from California, so we have to fly to Florida, and then you have to take a shuttle from the airport to the to the dock, and then you have to take a boat to the Bahamas for this cruise. And so I had been on a great adventure, like a 2-day adventure to get to the Bahamas, right? And we finally get to the point where we're able to get off the boat and we walk in, and the first thing you see is like at any cruise dock, there's like all the people selling the stuff, right? There's like all the knickknacks and doodads and whatnots and the magnets and the hats and the fans and the trinkets and the all the things. And so we're like, very cool, right? So we stop at a couple. Now, my family has a rule: we don't do souvenirs, right? So when anyone goes traveling anywhere in the world, you only bring home one magnet, lots of pictures, and stories. Those are the things that are required from you when you go somewhere. You don't bring back T-shirts. You don't bring back like all the other things. It's just the magnet, stories, and pictures. And so I find my magnet that spoke to me instantly. And everyone else in the group with me is like, looking at all the doodads. And so we spend the first hour of being in the Bahamas going from one souvenir shop to another souvenir shop to another souvenir shop to another souvenir shop. And by the end of that hour, I was livid. I was so angry. And I felt my ears hot. Like I was just so mad. Right. And I was like, why am I mad? Right. And I was like, if we go into one more souvenir shop, I'm gonna like no one's making it off this island. Like I am like I can't do this, right? And so I had this like interior conversation with myself while I'm standing there as they're staring at yet another t-shirt from another vendor, that says the Bahamas across it, right? And it was like, Monica, you have choices. Like, you don't have to be mad, right? Like, you just don't. You don't have to be upset. And I was like, you're right. The reason why I'm mad is because this is not what I wanted for myself. This was not my intention behind coming on this island. And that feeling of anger was a cue to do something different, right? Like to make a choice and to move into a different direction. So I did. I just was like, yeah, I'm out of here. I left them yet on another, if they went to another store and I went the other direction. I walked into a bar and I'm sitting at this bar and I order a double shot of Jameson. I'm like, I came here, I'm on vacation. I came here to have a good time. I haven't seen like a restaurant. I haven't seen any locals. I haven't done anything. And we've been here already an hour. And so I'm sitting there, a double shot of Jameson. The guy next to me goes like, wow, what's going on, lady? And I was like, I just want to experience this island and my friends want to shop for souvenirs. And he's like, oh, was that it? And so he hands me this map of the island. He's like, here's the island. And he's like, here are some recommendations. He was from Arizona, and the person he was with was from New Mexico. He's like, yeah, I come here all the time. You got to go see this person at the end of the stairs. They'll give you an oral history. Also over here, there's some there's some museums, and you got to go here. So he gives me this map, and I go on this grand adventure of the island all by myself, right? So I walk to the end, and I meet the guy that he told me was sitting at the end of the stairs, and he gives me the oral history of the island and the Queen Stairs. And then I walk in, and Mr. Rufus takes pictures of me on the stairs. And then I go up to the top, and I get to like walk through this museum, and there's like all of this history about like the fort that's at the top of this thing, and I have like a panoramic view of the entire island. And then I come down, and I go into some other museums, and I sit with who says he's the sexiest man on the island, Mr. Thomas. And we talk about everything from politics to sports as I sit there in his booth because he's selling souvenirs. But he wasn't trying to sell me anything. We were just sitting there having a lovely conversation about all the things. And then he gifted me a lanyard. He's like, "You're my friend. You can't leave away from my booth from the friend. Here's a lanyard because we're friends." I took a picture with him because I said, I'm married, so I got to tell my husband that I met the sexiest man on the island. And then I got to go into another museum before I went, and then it was time for me to get back on the boat, and I was like full and complete and whole, and like had this great experience. And when I bumped into everyone, they were like, "Where did you go?" And I was like, "Oh, I looked up at the island, and where we started was over here, and where I had ended up was like way on the other side." And I was like, "Oh, I went over there." And they were like, "How did you get over there?" And I was like, "Oh, it was a great adventure." And I had this full time. And I think sometimes we feel the feelings, right? The feelings are telling us to stop, right? Like the feelings are telling us no, right? And for some reason we feel trapped into like, yes, I'm feeling no, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be with these people, or I'm supposed to be in this job, or I'm supposed to be with this person, or whatever it is. And we're not submitting to our actual feelings that are behind that moment, right? And instead of listening to that, we are fighting against it. And I think a lot of us do that every day in our everyday lives where we're feeling the anger, right? We're feeling the sadness, we're feeling the frustration. And instead of doing something about it and like making a choice to do something different, uh, we just stay stuck and get resentful and you know all of the health effects that come along with that. And I think if we all submitted to those feelings probably more easily or more readily, I think we could actually come on a very different adventure and really enjoy life a bit better. And I could have stayed with them, but I would have been resentful the whole time. I would have been a bitch, to be honest, like the whole time had I stayed there. But instead, they got to continue with what they wanted to do, and I got to continue to do what I came there to do in the first place, which was explore the island. And so that story came up. I don't know why it came up, but I feel like um, when you were talking about your travels and how like you set out with this adventurous mind, it made me think of a time where it's like I set out with an adventurous mind and didn't submit, didn't submit to the wonder and all of the things for a while, and then I did, and everything changed.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's beautiful. And I had a similar experience when I lived in North Carolina on the beach in the Outer Banks, and just for a year. And I had been there for about a month and a half, and it was my birthday in February. And if you know anything about beach towns, like on the East Coast, especially out there, it's such a tourist trap that probably 70% of the businesses out there are closed during that time of year. So I was like, well, and I didn't know anybody, and I was just living in a little Airbnb in someone's basement. And while I, looked for permanent housing, and so I just woke up that morning and I was like, you know what, Spirit, because I'm by myself, and this was about 4 years ago, and I just went, you know what, Spirit, I leave my day up to you. My birthday will be whatever it's meant to be, and I'm just going to follow your lead. And it was like one of my best birthdays ever. It was kind of like a chilly, sort of like drizzly morning. And I was like, it's all good. So I had breakfast and I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? And then I was like, I want to go out shopping because there's this beautiful ring that I want that I've been eyeballing in a bunch of stores. And so I went to one of the stores that was actually open. It stays open year round. Holy crap. And I went there and I was like, yes, they have the ring. And it's a wave of the ocean. And I'm such like an ocean lover that I had to have it. And so I went there and I bought myself a birthday gift. And then I was like, oh, that was good fun. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, well, what do I want to do next? I'm like, I want to go up to Duck and I want to see what stores are up there. So I drove about 20 minutes up the road and I went up to the town of Duck and I went shopping there and I met this girl who was like restocking the store and everything. And we were talking about all kinds of stuff and we're just chit chatting. And I'm like, I made a new friend. That's so cool. And I ended up buying something there too, like a little bumper sticker for my car. I'm like, oh, I want food now. And I went somewhere and I forgot what I got for food, but I had lunch and then I was like, okay. And I just kept like bumping around places and hitting little stores and just like meeting people, even though it's like pretty dead there. The people who like are hardcore and live there, the locals, like those are the people you really want to meet, not, you know, the tourists who come and go or whatever. So it was really cool. And then I was like, okay, I gotta, you know, get home because the guy who lived next door to the Airbnb I was staying in, his name was Spartacus. He went by Spartacus, and we called him Sparty. He was 75, and he fancied himself like, you know, the person to show me around town since I was new. And so he told me he was going to take me to this Italian restaurant that's like a staple in the Outer Banks, and it's open year round too, because you eat for free on your birthday. So that was our plan. He was going to take me out to dinner, even though it's free for my birthday. I was like, okay. And while I'm out and about, he texts me and he's like, you're not going to be happy with me. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, I can't get off the toilet. I have been sick all day. I can't take you out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope you feel better. Like, oh, poor thing. And I could have just sat there and wallowed and been like, no, I have no dinner plans. What am I going to do? And just been like a big fat baby about it. But I was like, okay, I'm going to switch gears. And so I just texted my Airbnb host who lived upstairs and who was a local. And I said, hey, what's good pizza place? And he was like, oh yeah, go to Slice. They have the best. I'm like, okay. So I went and I got myself a little dessert that was like a red velvet cupcake or whatever, and some candles. Swung by Slice, got a couple of those babies, a bottle of wine. I went back to the Airbnb and I had myself a wonderful birthday dinner. And then after that, the skies cleared up and the sun came out to set. So I got to go for a walk on the beach on my birthday in February with beautiful blue skies and the sunset. And I was like, I couldn't have planned this day any better myself. So I always use that day to remind me to have faith and to follow Spirit's lead, because it's really me following my own lead, just from a higher perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yay. I love that. I love the stories. I love what always comes out of our conversations. It's just always so interesting. Because we just submit, whatever comes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing planned. Love that.
Yeah. So if someone is looking to add submission to their spiritual practice, how would you recommend they go about doing that?
Well, yeah, surrender is the big, big thing. So I would say start small. I would suggest two things. So the first thing would be to really make an effort that the next time, set an intention that the next time you hear, that inner voice, that voice of the intuition, urging you to do or not do something, just to make an effort to follow it just once and see what happens. If this is new for you, just try it once and see what happens. And then the other thing I would suggest is just trying with one thing in your day to say, you know what? Like, Monica, do what you do. I don't need to know the outcome of this. I don't need to know what it looks like to get from point A to point B. My job is to just show up. And so just for one thing, I don't know where I'm going to go get gas today. I'll just get in the car and see where I end up, whatever. Or I don't know what project I want to start working on for work. I'm just going to show up and then see what falls in my lap, see what happens. So those are the two things I would suggest. Jennifer, how about you?
Fantastic. Well, for me, I would suggest that you recognize what you're submitting to, right? Like Monica in your story, like you could have stayed with your friends and just submitted to the plan, and that's what you're supposed to do. Or you follow your adventurous spirit, right? Or, there's infinite possibilities. So just being open to that. And so practicing discernment is what I would share as a practice. So recognizing what you're submitting to and noticing your feelings, noticing your intuition and what's checking in with yourself to see what's real for you, what's rising up for you when you're thinking about those different choices and what you really want to do. And recognize that you have the power to choose. So even though we're talking about submission, there's still a little bit of power there to choose. We always have a choice. There is that free will. And so the submission is following, soul's lead and freeing your spirit to do that, but also practicing discernment, recognizing what you're committing to, what you're devoting your time and energy to, and then dedicating to your own path and just then submitting to it, right? Just setting the tone for that and then practicing discernment along the way to make sure that it is life supportive for you.
Yeah, I would actually say the biggest part about a submission practice is really understanding the difference between discomfort and pain,
Mm.
right? So often we avoid things because we don't want to be uncomfortable, um, or sometimes we avoid things because there was pain there before. And sometimes they feel like they're the same thing, but they're very much not the same thing. Pain means stop, right? So you think about when you get injured, right? Like you tear a ligament in your knee or you break your leg, you have pain there because your body is telling you stop. Like you can't do that. Do not do that. More damage will be done, right? And then there's discomfort, like working out in the gym, right? You get sore muscles after you've worked out. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. You're in some discomfort, but you can tell that it's not permanent or that it's not going to cause more damage by you continuing to work out and things of that sort. And so how we have that in the physical realm, we also have that in the spiritual realm as well, right? And so when you are feeling your emotions and it is anger, it's a stop. It's a stop. Stop doing this. Something about this isn't right. Something about this is not going to end well, or it's going to cause damage or harm, and then reflect on the feelings. Because anger is the final step. And before that, there was frustration, right? So, what in my story about like walking with my friends, like I was getting frustrated along the way. There were many signs along the way. They were like, "You don't want to do this." Like, well, what are you doing? Right? It's the anger came because I didn't listen to the frustration, right? And the frustration was actually disappointment in the very beginning. I was disappointed because we got came all this way to look at stores. Was probably the first thought I had. It was like, we came all this way and you guys want to do souvenir shopping? That's crazy. Like, why would I want to do that, right? But not recognizing the disappointment and continuing on and not submitting to that disappointment and saying, okay, wait, there's a juncture here that I could either speak up or I can ask for what I want or I can kind of negotiate for myself. Just staying quiet and staying in that space, it led to frustration that eventually led to anger. And I would say reflect on some times in your life in the past where there may have been some signs where there was like disappointment, and then disappointment led to frustration, and then frustration led to anger. And recognize where that pattern was there, and then apply that to future things. The discomfort is the disappointment, even the frustration, but the pain was the anger. The pain was the anger. And so do some reflection in that space, and have that help you guide you to further submitting to things. I should have submitted to my feelings as opposed to the group of people. And so hopefully you can learn that from that lovely story about the Bahamas. And sexy, Mr. Thomas. Okay. So
I want to see pictures.
what's funny, he's like a really old guy. So it was kind of like an oxymoron. He's like, I'm the sexiest man on, yeah, the whole thing. Anyway, we have come to the end of our show. We've hit our 30-minute mark. And so it's time for us to say goodbye. We could have these conversations for hours, but we promised that we would keep them succinct and short so that you can go on with your day. So before we go, we'd like to give for Dawn an opportunity to share, where do you want people to connect with you?
Awesome, awesome. They can connect with me on my website. So you go to www.dawnphoenix.org/contact.
Perfect. And as usual, Jennifer and I are inviting all of you to come and hang out with us. You got real today with us on the show, and now you can keep it real with us every Friday at 1 p.m., where we will come together and have a chat, a meetup, if you will, about like what spiritual practice we are using, how it's working for us, how it's not working for us, how it's serving us, how it's not serving us, so that we can kind of deepen those relationships and be able to cope with life better. Jennifer, is there anything else that you have to add to our closing here?
Yeah, well, just join us for that Keeping It Real with the Spiritual. It is at 1 p.m. Pacific or 4 p.m. Eastern, or you can convert the time. And it's not a recorded show. It's just us hanging out, kind of like a meetup. We hang out online, and it's just really enjoyable. And it's really supportive. And we go kind of deep, but have fun and keep it light at the same time. So I'm also interested in hearing what you think about submission. What are your thoughts? What came up for you as we were discussing things? So make sure those go in the comments so we can all join in on that conversation too.
Okay, well, that's us. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.